the carbon market is just too simplified.
We don't want violence, but what we really mean is we don't want violence against those who are keeping the system working the way it is. So
the way that people see the earth as part of their life.
I wrote, romanticizing indigenous peoples as stewards dumps all the onus on them to fix stuff.
I'm more of a oriented toward a scientific approach to climate change. I take the evidence developed by scientists, the models and such very seriously, but also a human health approach.
I work with different facilities and technical experts across campus on a variety of different areas, like our energy systems, transportation.
My research is about climate colonialism, particularly focusing on ocean spaces. I'm from a very privileged background where I haven't experienced severe impacts of climate change.
I similarly had a privileged upbringing, but I've definitely witnessed it through my dissertation work that follows a project in Zambia.
I think our background in engineering really thinks that it can solve climate change. In my research, I focus a lot on power dynamics, interpersonal power dynamics between especially Western engineers and communities.
what does climate change mean to me is that a lot of people in Peru, particularly Andean people of Quechua origin, are immediately suffering the changes in the climate patterns because of the rain becoming more unreliable, affecting crops. I think that everybody knows that.
So I am from a community that has this relationship with nature all the time, because people use their natural resources all the time. So the way that they are facing this problem is that they don't have that access to these natural resources compared to some years ago.
Science and innovation will always have the capacity to provide that to an extent, but since it's a problem of lived experience, I don't think it's best to continue to frame it that way as a simple problem to solve.
To me, climate change is the result of environmental violence. Like it's the outcome rather than the problem in and of itself. And so to me, it's like there's a violence in our minds towards the environment, towards all the beings around us, and the manifestation of that is the climate change.
I really liked the person that talked about the data and the models, so kudos to whoever that was. Because that also reminds me of, there's like that, maybe it's not super famous, maybe it's only famous to me, but it's like all models are wrong and some models are useful, kind of thing. And so I think like part of the challenge is like our obsession, our being like more Western, even data that is not reflected in outcomes. Because when it comes to like humans, like all the models are wrong, and like somehow we're totally fine with that, and we just keep pushing forward. And so I agree with you where like the carbon market is just too simplified.
You have all of these universities trying to reach carbon neutrality. So in most cases, I think the way that universities interact with the carbon offsetting system is as purchasers. As by purchasing offsets to try to get closer to that carbon neutrality goal. But there are also like a handful of universities who sell carbon credits through their work to reduce carbon emissions. And so selling those credits is part of their strategy to fund like deeper decarbonization.
And so I found that particularly interesting as well with how many of the projects are about conservation. And as someone who worked in conservation, like that just ridiculousness of like somehow you get credit for maintaining this current system. And like that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
You like in much of the world you can get carbon credits through like conservation. She's like, but isn't conservation just what we should be doing anyway? And like what's between conservation and just maintenance? And I think to me there's a very strong parallel between exactly like as you were saying what we do at universities, because a lot of that work I was just describing is like just part of it should be part of just responsibly operating a university campus, in my opinion, in my personal opinion.
I have so many reasons why I don't like this, but like one of the reasons is I think it tends to romanticize the right side. You know, like it's green and it's community based, or like, you know, it's beautiful, blah blah blah. But the reality is not necessarily. It doesn't look like that in reality in many cases.
We tend to have this very idealistic perspective of indigenous people, and we think that they are the guardians of the environment. They are like the stewards of, you know, like sustainability. But there is plenty of evidence that indigenous people have destroyed their environment. Like there is, at least in Peru, the Nazca people, they were doing great until they decided to start growing, and they destroyed all the algarrobo, which is a relative of the carrot tree. All the algarrobos were destroyed, and they created a massive climate change, you know. So pretty much, you know, it's like you have indigenous people who have destroyed the environment too, so it is not the case that they are like absolutely innocent, you know, from the historical perspective. But that does not mean, you know, that they are as responsible as the left side that we're seeing. So it's always balance.
One thing that I've been thinking a lot about, it happens to be related to my own work on carbon capture. Well, for emitting carbon, what if we just shove it underground and then all is good? Well, this sandstone bed is like the ideal because it has the maximum capacity and all these things. It's like, okay, that's all cool and well and good. But our drinking water is there. And so there's this like fundamental disconnect, I feel, that binary of like it being only good or only bad. It's like the carbon capture and offset is good from a climate change standpoint, but awful in the scenario from a water quality standpoint. And so leaving room for both of those things to be true at once and recognizing where something can be good and bad at the same time. Just like with, like, I mean, all of the notes on this side are like, is this good for the communities where these projects are happening? The conservation or restoration or whatever offsetting projects are happening. That's what I saw in a lot of those. Like, is that what people want? Is it good for them?
I'm assuming, just like based on the thing, that it's the Samburu people, so it's not just northern Kenyans. It's specifically a tribe in the north that I've actually previously worked with. In fact, for me, the Samburu are really special because it's the very first water project I worked on. And there was a woman, I don't remember, because this was over a decade ago, how to pronounce or spell her Samburu name. Her English name that she gave to us was Angela.
So I am from a region of Guatemala which is called Los Cuchumatanes in Spanish. The name of the community is Santiago Chimaltenango. In Mayan language is Chimbal.
One of the things that struck me when working with them, and specifically when working with those that did livestock, is in the Samburu language, their numbering system, they have number 1, number 2, and then many. Like they just have a number that means essentially more than 2. They don't have like a 10 kind of thing. And the idea is that if you have 2 cattle, you will have many. Having more than 2, they will have offspring, and like those are your offspring as well, kind of thing. And so they have practices that really care for their cattle really well, including in such a resource-starved area.
If I have a piece of land, this piece of land is going to feed me every day. So that's why, for some reason, we use the same word. Inch means my land, okay? It's because I have possession of a piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word. But if I say my body, we use the same word. I say inch al, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's like an abstract noun that means my body, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So for some reason we use the same word to refer to land in general, and using the same word to body, because this connection is really a significant relation between land and body. So I am thinking of the way that, for example, if I say my land and my body, it means that we are attached to each other.
As a semi-nomadic tribe already, they've already faced so many hardships. And like when I was working with them, part of their challenge was that they were being forced essentially to be in an area where they would have normally moved throughout. And so it really has stress on water resources, because like that's one of the benefits of being semi-nomadic is you live near the water resource depending on like the time.
I remember when my parents told me when I was a child that in order to cut a tree, you have to talk to the land first.
Oh.
You have to get her permission to do that. You are not allowed to cut the tree without talking or without getting the permission from the land. I think I'm not quite sure if people still know about this, because over time, because we have some ideas from outside, using, for example, or with people that go to the church with Christianity. At some point, people are changing the way that they see this relation with nature.
So I just wanted to share some of the things about the Samburu, because I think colonialism and neocolonialism and even this can be these really big things, but these are I don't know, I was trying to humanize it a bit more.
I mean, just a comment about the north-south binary. One of the things that we really struggle with in the Jain community is complicity in the violence that takes place after the British colonized India and did everything they did in order to take as much as they could, right? Like building the railroads to extract whatever they could through the railroad system from as many communities as they could, stealing spices, stealing grain, stealing everything, imposing a double tax, all of this craziness, right? Now our own people are doing that same sort of stuff to themselves and not realizing that they're doing the exact same thing to their own people that the British did to us.
People don't want violence when they can really profit from the oppressed being just quiet and submissive. So it's we don't want violence, but what we really mean is we don't want violence against those who are keeping the system working the way it is. So it's of course, that was my question is I've been thinking about this for a while, because the more I keep listening to the things that happen, and not even with the carbon offset, it's more with any type of industry that can benefit from the exploitation of the land of indigenous people by displacing them. I always ask, my fiance is an anthropologist and she works with the Amazonian communities, and I'm like, how do you try to give them weapons? Because they keep, getting invaded by loggers, like illegal gold mining, like people, like prospectors for oil, it's like, they only have like arrows. But then, of course, their answer is like, if you give them weapons, then, like the army is going to go, and it's like, well, let's not give them weapons, give them territorial autonomy. It's like, recognize that this land is like their own terrain. They have to, if you want to do anything with them, you need to do international treaties or something that has that level, but of course I'm dreaming. But in a way, like what you said got me thinking about that. It's like, of course, violence is not going to bring any solutions in the end, but the thing is that violence does exist and keeps being, waged for centuries against the same type of people for the same type of reason. And then you wonder, it's like, it's only because they've been defeated that they cannot really defend themselves. And the system, that is supposed to keep them protected is really not protected.
What I like about this model in particular is it's the idea of two-eyed seeing, but in a way that doesn't, for someone like me who comes from a Western background, it's not that I'm like becoming indigenous or something like that. Like I love that this model, like it's the two-eyed seeing, but then there's also me, right? So like it's how am I understanding, interacting with, these other two ways as well.
At first, a lot of the work that I was attempting to do with indigenous communities, and not just environmental work, but like in general, was I didn't do a good job of valuing my own relationship with these different forms of knowledge. And I think it can be it can quickly become co-optation if someone doesn't acknowledge their own cultural background, like their own place. It's not like there's Western and then there's indigenous, and then like those are the only two options. Like each of us come from our own specific cultural backgrounds that are neither of these bubbles or categories.
And it's not that they need to, become indigenous or try to co-opt, right? They can still acknowledge the indigenous ways of knowing and, like work that into their life in a way that isn't necessarily like co-opting.
So like rather than positioning myself first as an engineer, which is like supposedly culturally neutral, but that's industrialized. That's not a culture necessarily, right? It is just colonialism in the skin that legitimizes that system of knowledge. But if I first approach it as I'm first here as a Jang, and then I'm using some engineering knowledge, but always in reference to my own cultural background and my own set of values, then I can do work with another community and say, here's what my values are, here's what your values are, here's where things are in common, here's where things are different. And that allows for it to be participatory rather than just like completely ignoring or putting my own values set aside.
Yeah.
Right? But also without defaulting to something that's industrialized as the norm.
So this is a picture. I think for a lot of people that I know, Robin Wall Kimmerer and Breaking Sweetgrass was like a great introductory to kind of these ideas. And what I love about Breaking Sweetgrass is it's not this idea that like humans need to disappear, right? Like what they were talking about in that, like in the podcast, right? Of like how like we are like another ecosystem, like in the earth, and like we can actually like work together with the earth. I think like we can connect this and if we're thinking about like racism to like it's not about colored blindness, right? It's like a similar idea of like, yeah, whoever I'm coming from, whatever background I'm coming from, like, is a part of it, is a part of this, like, story.
I wrote, romanticizing indigenous peoples as stewards dumps all the onus on them to fix stuff. That's what I wrote on here, which is essentially like, yeah, right, without even really realizing it, we're basically saying that because they have the knowledge of the landscape and the ecosystems, that it suddenly becomes their job, without realizing that, like, we have to take up our own responsibility in repairing the damage that we've done, whether it was intentional or not. It doesn't matter. We've all played some role in causing the damage, and so therefore we have some responsibility in fixing it.
The way that people see the earth as part of their life. That's why I wrote that some of them give their lives to defend the mother nature. So that's why children or parents used to say that to children that they have to respect mother nature all the time, because it's our home, it's our mother.
Yeah. Christianity and the ways that it's been used for colonization have really pushed a lot of patriarchal arguments, right? And so I think that in a lot of these societies we do see nature as the mother, and because of that, it's this idea that, like, we have dominion over it, we have domain over it, because of the, like, patriarchal ideal. If you see God as male, if you see God as gendered in that way, I think, again, like, yeah, that faith background has a huge impact on then how people interact with the nature.
In the Catholic Church, when I was a child, they used to say that Mayan people are like, they have many gods, so that is bad for because God is just one. There's only one God. So
in, like, the beginning of the Bible, in Genesis, there's a passage during the creation of the earth in which God creates humans, and some translate the passage to, it is essentially man being, like, people's responsibility to subdue the earth, and others translate it to steward. And to be a steward of something versus to subdue something, to have dominion over, is quite different.
In India, people justify discrimination on the basis of the caste system because it's a Hindu construct, but it didn't actually come from any original Hindu text. It was a commentary on a Hindu text that was then interpreted such that it established the caste system in society.
Yeah.
So I wondered to what extent, like, are those Puritan ideals that you're referring to just Christianity appropriated?
Yeah.
Or Christianity misinterpreted? Like, that's not actually the foundation of the religion, but it's been weaponized in order to justify the cognitive dissonance of committing all this violence.
Yeah, 100%.
The more I study, and I'm sure, like, the meaning of this verse is going to change with time, but Warren's note here, that human health depends on health of species and ecosystems.
The point on health, I spend a lot of time working on the health impacts of social, economic, and environmental systems. Put in the context of carbon markers, it goes beyond, an economic or financial transaction. It goes to the quality of life in the communities, and also the determinants of health of people in the communities, and the health of people in the communities is closely related. to the health of ecosystems, the health of the animals, and also environmental conditions.
Just immediately made me think of this verse, and it was one that like the diasporic Jain community decided as like not like a slogan, but it became part of the emblem of all diasporic Jain communities in the Western Hemisphere. And the verse is Parasparoto Graho Jivana, which literally means the function of souls is to render service to one another. And so it literally is like that is the reason for like the divine, right? The soul, the life force, the purpose of its existence is to help other souls.
This is why I love participatory approaches.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to the like we're not some objective observer, right? Like we are a part of this. It's doing things in collaboration, in community, in communion. It's not this person or that person. There's not good and evil, right? Like everything is gray, and that's okay, and we can still find truth and knowledge and like move, quote unquote forward, whatever direction we determine forward to be.
So the way that you organized the workshop, it was interesting to me because we have ideas from many people from different places or different backgrounds. That's the key of knowledge, I think, because if we want to construct something new, we have to collaborate, we have to work together in order to have something interesting for people.